students. Okay, today we are going to study about frictional force. So frictional force will be one of the chapter in our UPSR topic. Okay, so those students who are learning in standard 6 level, okay, this video will be for you. Okay, so if you go for frictional force here, okay, frictional force is one of the force. There are many forces, okay, that we have to learn, but today we are going to study about frictional force only. So frictional force will be one of the example of forces. Okay, so when you go for frictional force, the meaning for frictional force is actually it's a kind of force which is produced when two surfaces are in contact. So if you see here, I already given you the meaning for frictional force. A type of force produced when two surfaces rub against each other. That means two surfaces must be in contact and they will the two surfaces must be rubbing each other. So by doing this we can produce frictional force. Example, when you go for the surfaces of your hands, okay, when I rub the hands together like this, okay, for sure I can cause the frictional force to be produced. So this is one example of frictional force. So when you go for frictional force or friction, okay, this friction is actually opposes the direction of movement of an object. That means if an object is moving, frictional force, the direction of frictional force will be not, okay, together with the movement of the object, it will be against the movement of the object. For sure friction will be not supporting objects, okay, movement. So the friction will be not supporting the movement of the object. That is the concept here. So when there is higher friction, the object can move fast or not? Of course cannot, because friction will be going against the movement of the object. So from there we have to understand that higher friction will be causing the objects to slow down or will stop the object, and for sure higher object will be not causing the object to move faster, because friction will be against the movement of the object. Next, when you see the diagram which is given here, you got one object, this is an object, and the movement of the object will be on the right hand side, but the friction is actually against the movement, it will be at the left hand side. So this is how the friction will be, the direction of the friction will be. Next, the factors that affect the friction. Okay, under the factors we are going to learn how to increase the friction or how to decrease the friction. So when you go for amount of the friction, the amount of the friction produced dependent on certain factors. There are two important factors here. The first one, the type of surfaces. As I told you before, two surfaces must be in contact. The surfaces in contact can produce friction. So the type of surfaces is actually important here in order to determine how much of friction can be produced here. So when you go for surfaces, okay, the type of surfaces, we got two types of surfaces generally, smooth and rough. Okay, normally when you go for smooth surfaces, the two smooth surfaces which is in contact will be not producing much friction. Example, when you go for the surfaces of two mirrors, okay, these two mirrors are in contact and the surfaces of the mirrors are, of course, will be very smooth. So the surfaces of mirror, when they are in contact and rub each other, will they produce more friction? They can produce friction, but the friction level will be very low because they are smoother. When you go for rough surfaces, example carpet. Carpet will be having rough surfaces. So the carpet, okay, will be producing more friction compared to the mirror. So when you go for the next factor here will be mass of an object. Okay, when we go for masses of objects, okay, mass, we can categorize the mass into two categories, either heavy or light. So when you go for heavy objects will be very difficult to be moved. Why? Because heavy object will be having higher frictional force together with the contact, together with the surfaces in contact with them. So when you go for light objects will be very easier to be moved because light object will be exerting lesser frictional force. So here you need to remember that heavy object will be giving us more frictional forces and light objects will be giving us, okay, lesser frictional forces. Next, we go for the effects of friction. Under effects of friction, okay, there are three main effects of friction. The first one, friction can produce heat. When two surfaces, okay, is actually in contact and it produces more frictional force, means this frictional force can produce more heat energy. So heat can be produced, okay, due to friction. Example, when I take, okay, when we rub our hands together, both of the hands are actually rubbing together, so the surfaces in contact will be producing some heat. That's why we will feel the warmness. Okay, so this is one of the example, okay, which prove that friction can produce heat. Next, friction can be making things to wear and tear. This one, the good example can be our shoe or can be also tire. When you go for car tires, normally we can use the car tires, okay, new car tires can be used maximum for 1 year, okay. Other than that, okay, after 1 year what will happen to the surfaces of the tire? It will wear and tear. That means the surfaces of tire will be undergoing wearing and tearing. Why? Because whenever you are using the car, whenever the tire is moving, the tire will be in contact with the road, and the contact of the tire together with the surface of the road will be producing more friction. This friction will produce heat. This heat will be making the tire surfaces to be wearing and tearing, and later on the surface cannot be used anymore because it will be causing the car, okay, to slip away. So to avoid that, we need to change the car tire. So this is the examples of things getting the example where the things will be undergoing wearing and tearing, and we need to change to new things actually. Now when you go for next one, this is the third effect. The third effect will be opposes the motion. For sure, friction will oppose the motion, and friction will be not supporting motion or movement. That means whenever anything is moving, if you got more friction there, means the friction will be making the movement of the objects to be slower, and the friction also can make or can stop the objects. So here what we have to understand, the third effect of friction is actually what? Slowing down the objects or stopping the object will be the third effect. Next one, friction. This frictional force or the friction can be used in solving problems in our daily life. So when you go for friction, increasing friction or decreasing friction, in both cases you can solve certain problems in daily life. Okay, by increasing the friction, first we can increase the friction by making patterns on the car tires. Normally when you see the car tires, the surfaces of the car tires, you will be having many type of patterns there. These patterns are actually drawn because we want to make the surface of the car tire to be rougher. So rough surfaces of the car tire can be increasing the friction. When it increases the friction, it will be making the accident level to be low because the car will not slip over, okay, whenever the the road surfaces are smooth due to the rain. Next one, when you go for road surfaces, okay, the road surfaces is actually made, okay, by using tar and pebbles. So this mixture of tar and pebbles will be making the road surface to be rough. The rough road surfaces, okay, will be increasing the friction. The increment in friction, okay, of the road surfaces will be making sure that the cars are not slipping over. Next one, pattern on shoe soles. Okay, when you go for shoe soles, okay, normally we will be having patterns on the shoe soles because we need to increase friction, okay, between the shoe soles and also the floor. Why? Then only we will not slip over or we will be not falling down. Next, decreasing the friction. Okay, in certain phenomena of life, we will be decreasing the friction also. Why we need to decrease the friction? Okay, because decreasing the friction also will be giving you certain advantages in certain areas. The first one, we can use ball bearings, okay, we can use ball bearings for the wheels, okay, to decrease the friction. In this case, if we want to make the object to move faster, okay, in order to transport the object or send the object faster, okay, we want to make the object to move faster means we can use ball bearings, because ball bearings will be decreasing the level of friction between the wheel and also the floor. Okay, next one, hinges. When you go for hinges near the door, okay, normally, okay, when you're opening the door or closing the door, okay, the hinges will be making sure that the door is actually moving, okay, smoothly. But sometimes the hinges can undergo rusting, okay. Due to that, it will be very rough, okay, it will become very rough and there will be more friction. In order to decrease this one, we can use lubricants. Okay, we can add lubricants near to the hinges and we can make it to be smoother, and usage of lubricant can decrease the friction also. Next one, talcum powder. Normally this one we will be using for carom board. Okay, everybody, okay, knows about carom board, actually one of the famous game. Okay, when you go for carom board here, okay, we will be, okay, using talcum powder on the carom board in order to make the carom board surfaces to be smoother. And when we are using the carom seats there, we want the carom seats to move smoothly without any frictional force. That's why we are using talcum powder there. The application of talcum powder here will be decreasing the friction between the carom seat and the board. Next one, car engines. Okay, when you go for car engines here, normally car engines will be using certain lubricants. Okay, why the usage of car lubricants are very important for car engines? Because you don't want the car engines to become heaty, or you don't want to cause the car engine to undergo wearing or tearing process very fast. So in order to take care of the car engine and in order to make sure the engines are actually working smoothly for many years, we will be using lubricants in order to decrease the frictional level. Okay, this one will be the frictional force topic, and we already done, okay, the learning part and also the teaching part for frictional force. Hope you understand. Okay, we will meet you in next video. Thank you.